These consultancies are giving them $25,000 and do whatever they want. Join a yoga class, Bali, relax.
Hiring manager, you cannot put your 80% of the time just to read resumes.
Usually judge a LinkedIn profile within seconds. What is your preference while looking at the resume?
The average resume is read only for 6 to 8 seconds.
Google has been using us like their unpaid labor.
It might seem like a lot, but it is a small price.
Full form of CAPTCHA is
You really go through them fast.
BCG who was hiring for 2025 interns.
Like the race was over before we even came to know that there was a race.
Hello, and welcome to the Data Titan podcast. In today's episode, we are joined with our guest, Naman Chaudhary. Naman is currently working in the US as an intern program manager at TomTom. His role often demands him to manage, recruit, and also train the interns that are a part of his team. So with his help today, we're going to dive into some really interesting topics like what it's like applying for and hiring interns in the US, and what does the current job market look like for them. Also, we're going to understand how do these interns work when they're onboarded onto huge data science projects and how are they trained to perform well. We're also going to learn from Naman that what are the day-to-day challenges that they face and how is it that they resolve them. So sit back, grab a snack, and enjoy the next 15 minutes of the show. Also, please do let us know if you have any comments or suggestions in the comment section below. And welcome to the Data Titan podcast. Today we have the pleasure of hosting Naman on the show with us. Naman is currently working at TomTom as a program manager for interns. And Naman, I'm going to hand this over to you now. So rather than me telling people about your job, I think you would do a better job at it. So why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, sure. So I'll start by telling a little about TomTom. So TomTom is a mapping and location technology company. So we are, like, as TomTom, one of the very few, like, if you see, there are many companies who sell navigation apps and a lot of products on top of a digital map, but they don't truly make their own map. There are about 4 or 5 true global map makers, and TomTom is one of them. The others are Google, Apple, here, and an open community of OSM. So making a map is tough. And by making a map, I mean companies like put their algorithms and show you where to go, do all the route planning and stuff. But gathering all the data, tons of data for the whole world, and then putting that in a structure that makes it a map so that you can make products out of it, that is a different challenge altogether. And TomTom does that. Within TomTom, I am in that team that makes the map. So, and within that maps team, I am part of the source intake team. So all of the non-sensor data, which comes from satellites, and it comes from other companies that we buy data from, and these could be like travel companies and small companies that have information around small businesses, around such things. They sell their data to us, and it is my team, the whole big team, which makes sense of all of this data and passes it on to the downstream teams. And within this, when we get to my roles, so within the source intake team, my role is, as it says, intern program manager. So I am charged with the responsibility to innovate within the team. We come up with new ideas, new ways to improve how we collect data, how we process data, because the magnitude we're talking about here is really big, because it is the data for the whole world. And again, the bigger challenge is like TomTom, because it has been in the industry for multiple decades. The challenge for us is not making a map. The challenge for us now is keeping the map up to date, keeping it real time, because you see, places change, things change. So it's not a static thing. There are different versions of everything. So the map has to be made in real time so that people can really use it. So that kind of dealing with that kind of data is tough. So that is where my team comes in. We cannot really stop, and our job is never considered done. We need to like innovate and build up new processes and new tools to take care of all that data. And for this, we try to get interns and have them work on these small projects. They get a good experience and learning out of it, and we in turn get good value.
So you mentioned that you are responsible for the entire intern life cycle, basically. Like the interns will be having you as the point of contact, and you will be the one who will be designing the internship program and what they'll do over the short period of time at the company. And those internships will be a subset of the current team that
Yeah.
you explained that you're a part of. So I just like I'm wondering, if not talking about the exact job right now, just
Yeah.
talking about the current landscape. Um, as you are responsible for the entire life cycle at the company, and let's say I'm an intern, I'm like starting off from the application process, like with this
Yeah.
current job market right now, like if I
Yeah.
open LinkedIn and I see a job opening, there are like 200 applicants within the first hour and thousands within, weeks.
Yeah. Yeah.
You being the intern hiring manager, um, how do you manage these many applications and streamline the process?
Yeah. So that's a good point actually. So till now, like how I have been seeing, like anyone who is not into managing people, how they see the project is not just about strategizing and getting things done and using the right tech. It's also about a lot about team building, and that is a very very difficult part. Like when I joined in this role, I thought like having an intern, because I've been on the other side who applies for applications, and me
Exactly.
considering myself a very strong applicant, I feel like I felt it should be easy, very easy to get someone who's good. But when you start hiring and putting those jobs out there, it takes months, and building the right team and for the right applications is tough. And especially given that in my role, we are always dealing with new projects which have tons of uncertainty, and there could be 10 other ways of dealing with the same problem. So you don't even know the kind of role you're hiring for. It's not, you don't need a very specific skill set. We need more generalists, and but again, someone who's had good experience with at least one or two things. And then comes the task. As you said, you receive many applicants. So the way I try to limit is putting some deadlines on how long you're receiving the resumes. Because again, ideally, like my personal practice is not to have a condition where people apply, submit their applications, and then I don't even see it. So I try to a definite window such that within this you submit all your applications, and it is only after that that we see all of them. And in the other ways, we do not really try very hard to limit it. In fact, the goal is usually to increase the participation or the response that you have. But again, that does not serve us very good, because the next step is resume selection. And
Hmm.
then once you have like 400 or 500 applicants in your folder, those many resumes to see and cover letters and the messages they type, and then multiple links to their portfolios and GitHub profiles they provide, it ends up being a lot. That part is challenging.
Yes. So I was just wondering, like 400 applicants, 1,000 applicants, how important is an early application? Like, as I see a job opening, I just apply right now, or should I take a couple of days, tailor my resume according to the requirements, according to the company, and then wait it out and then have my application at the like 350th place while seeing? What have you noticed, like while reading like the applications, or having like a talk with the HR? When you start reading resumes, I believe that you develop a bias based on the
Oh, yeah.
first good resume that you see, and then you just start comparing everything to that particular resume, and then things change here and there. So early application, is that
Hmm.
like should that be prioritized over like just focusing a lot of tailoring your resume every time you see, like I'm just specifically talking about this job market
Yeah.
right now with
Yeah.
like the absurd amount of applications. Like, what is your thought about it?
Yeah. So one, shouldn't start it. It becomes more cliched, but it depends.
Hmm.
And the reason I say it is because if you're like, if I'm a hiring manager and I'm like hiring for someone and I need them on the team now, this is a difficult problem I'm dealing with, and the company wants a solution. We want to build something. We have the plan out for it. So I don't really want to wait for months and months to get a person. So people, then that is when you have these ongoing hiring that you apply or people start applying, and we're looking through the resume, being hopeful that we find someone who's good enough to interview, whose skills are on the surface it seems like they align and they'll be a good match. So we call them for interviews and stuff, and then again, if they still like seem a good match, we hire them. So in those cases, it can give you a good amount of advantage, like a sizable advantage if you apply early. But let's say, as it has become like in the US, because I hire in the US, the as it has become the practice of hiring interns maybe an year before they actually start, or year and a half, sometimes even 2 years before they start. So in those cases, the hiring is not that big of a thing, neither for the HR nor for the hiring manager. So people apply and then they take their time, and when all the applications are closed, then they start reviewing, and then you do not really have a big advantage over that.
Yeah.
So it depends. And then the other thing is, you said about the bias. The bias is real. I just started hiring and went through one round of it. It takes a lot of effort to keep bias out of the whole process. You have to be conscious about it. You cannot just go in and see, look for a resume, because it's not just as simple as looking for something. Because one, you don't know what is true on the resume, and second, finding everything is there and then going through everything. And again, like, one or an applicant or people out there would see it from the eye of an applicant. Like, if I like put the time to make a resume, they have to go through it and spend hours. You spend hours on making a resume, but as a manager, there's tons of other tasks, and then there is team building, the hiring. You want people so that they can work on the team and you can meet your team goals. So you, as a hiring manager, you cannot put your 80% of the time just to read resumes.
Hiring.
So again, it as it comes, like prioritization, one of the big challenges. So you really go through them fast. Try to look for those hooks, those things, those experiences. But I try to spend a lot of time on this, like take extra time to do this. Even then, it's tough. And sometimes, other than bias, you also have reverse bias, because sometimes you're so conscious that I shouldn't be like be more inclined towards a certain group or a certain kind of people, that you sometimes kind of start giving them disadvantage for that. But again, you need to be very conscious, and yeah, time consuming task it is for sure.
Yeah, so as you said, na, it depends. So I just remembered this thing that during the fall term, I guess in 2022, there was an event at Pine, and
Yeah.
I don't know if
But
Bain or BCG who was hiring for 2025 interns.
yeah,
Oh my God.
We were like, it's 2020, like we are applying for full-time positions for 2023. They are hiring for internships for like 2025. Like they are
yeah,
planning that ahead. And it blew my mind that are we not putting the amount of effort, or we just don't know about these things, that they're
yeah.
so well prepared and so ahead in planning
That,
everything.
yeah, that felt really wrong. Like, the race was over before we even arrived to even to know that there was a race. So
Yes.
it was something, but that's how industries work. Things get competitive, and every company wants to hire the best of talent.
Yes.
So you move, you move, you move. Everyone keeps moving so back in time.
And right now what's happening is all these consulting firms, they are paying people to sit idle. Like I just read somewhere yesterday or the other that people like interns, or I no, I think the full-time employees who are supposed to start in 2024, these consultancies are giving them $25,000 just to stay in the contract and do whatever they want. Join a yoga class,
To delay their
go
contract.
to Bali, relax, but delay their joining date.
Yeah.
Because they have the talent, they wasted so much of their resources, time, energy, and money on shortlisting them and interviewing them. They don't want to lose that talent, but also they are uncertain of whether we have work for them or not. But they are just hopeful that next year they'll have some work for them. But this is absurd.
It's a small price to pay, right? Like $25,000 might seem like a lot, but it is a
Yeah.
small price to pay for the amount of effort that they've put into hiring these people.
Yeah.
So interesting. And I think this is a big problem with companies right now, that they hire more than they have work for. Like, I have colleagues who have been working with me, and they've been like, we've seen people come in tens to this organization, to my team, and I don't have any work. So what are they doing here? And it's just so funny, right? When you think of it, they're like, okay, I could do this. I already have 8 months of experience in my bag. I can do this job. Why do you need to add 10 more people to my team? Interesting. And I think that we were discussing this yesterday. So what you said, that you take the time out to actually read through and
pinpoint a resume and like just break it down and see whether the applicant is good enough or no. We read the statistic that it takes the average resume is read only for 6 to 8 seconds.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was really interesting. Like, is that true?
Could very much be true. I wouldn't like deny that. But again, because I know it took me extra effort. I had to push. It wasn't a pleasant experience. I didn't really enjoy doing it, but I saw it as a good job because I really wanted someone good to work with me on the project.
Yeah, like Naman, as we probably, used to discuss the problems that we face. Like it's the same thing as machine learning models, like garbage in, garbage out. If you
Yeah.
get good quality interns, then you don't have to tell them much to do. Like they will figure out stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, just coming to the resume point, like as in the shortlisting process, like what is your preference while looking at the resume? Like by preference, I mean that let's say we look at a LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
Usually judge a LinkedIn profile within seconds.
Yeah. For
I
sure.
just go to the places that the person has studied. Okay, he studied from this. He has worked at these 4 places. Done. That's it. And we're so quick to judge. Is it the same thing with like resumes as well? And like, are there any sorts of buckets that you prefer over the others? Like, let's say what college the person has graduated from, or any previous, work experience in the exact thing that you're looking at, skill sets or like whatever. Like, what do you look at in a resume in the first glance?
Yeah. As you mentioned, like being very conscious of the biases, I would be like to a very good extent lying if I say there is no bias involved, because it is called bias in the first place because you're very unconscious about it most of the time. You don't really know you're doing the bias. So and again, like if you have good things like you worked at good big tech companies, you've done something good there, and it has to be relevant. It's not like you've done something which is in no way relevant to what you're going to do on the project. So it has to be something relevant. But then again, sometimes because these are interns, you don't expect them to have like 3, 2, or even any experience sometimes in that technology. So in those cases, I really look for some commitment that they've shown to any project, any school project, or any past intern, and then they've done something good about it, and then they know how to communicate it. And again, this does not mean that if someone has done good work and is not communicating it well, then they're not the good person. But again, it makes my job tough. If someone is communicating that they saved so many hours, improved the efficiency, did this, did that, they are at least connecting their work to something that was the goal given to them. They were not just writing code. They were doing something. Things were done for a reason. And then other things, other involvements, college also definitely plays a good role. I mean, ask yourself, if you see a resume coming from Dartmouth, or if you see a resume coming from Harvard, MIT, you like it. It just has to be relevant. And sometimes there are students like I regularly receive students who are not into computer science or data science, not into those programs. But they do all of that in their time, and the experience and the projects that they show, open source projects and things they do by themselves, that speaks a lot. So and sometimes like not everyone does open source, but if they do, I try to open the GitHub profiles and see how active they are, what kind of things they contributed to. People have personal profiles and websites and web pages for themselves. I try to look at them also, and then we invite them, and then we have this screening call sort of thing. So I am very much hands-on. It takes a lot of time. So we both do it, me and the HR, and so we invite them and see if what the perception we had really matches the person we're talking to.
That's what, like, I was just wondering, based on the start, the 6 to 8 second start, and based on what you do, you're actually doing a lot more work.
Yeah.
So yeah, kudos to you.
Because like that, like you said, right, you've been on the applicant end of the spectrum, so you know the anxiety, you know the frustration when you don't get a yes or a no mail. You're just in the void. You're like, am I getting in, am I not getting in? Like, did the HR even bother looking at my resume? So really, like, I feel like that's where you're coming from. Like, you know what it feels like to be that intern applicant with unpredictable.
That is also one of the good cultures at TomTom also, I would say, with the HR team. usually we don't just look for like evidence that you've done something good. We try to like go through the process of placing trust and then seeing like they do not break our trust. And by this I mean like we try to give chances or opportunities to people. You might like, it might seem that they haven't done a lot, but they're very young, they're sophomores, they haven't even
Yeah.
started their career like really, but they could be good, they could be smart people. And again, with most of the things, it's not really that tough. Like we are solving big problems, big things, but again, it's not a research company. We don't research ML. We apply ML into things, at least in the areas that I deal with. So you just have to be like smart with things and do some problem solving, and you can get around to doing a lot of things given ChatGPT and tons of other tools. We do not
Absolutely.
endorse using ChatGPT full time. We are still buying GitHub Copilot that can be used, but because we have bought it.
I just have one last question in terms of this, like the resume talk. So you mentioned that people can connect their work to actionable insights like saving hours and stuff. So how often do you see a resume that you think that this person could be good, but what he's written is absolutely nothing? Like he could have made his resume like a lot better. Like he is studying at these colleges. The thing that he has worked on, it is good. It's like high level stuff, but he's just not able to express it. Like, would you go on with that resume or not? And I remember you telling me about receiving applicants like from Germany and stuff, which had
Yeah,
like horrible
yeah,
resumes. Like,
yeah.
just,
Also,
explain a bit about.
again,
It can also go the other way around, right? Like if they have really boasted up their resume and been like,
yes,
oh,
definitely
it's
it can go to the,
amazing, glorified it. And when you interview them, they are just like,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
okay, yeah, good.
This is one of the things I saw like when I was trying to get myself hired into a job.
Hmm, hmm,
Doing a job and making a resume or looking like you can do the job. These are two very different things.
yeah,
Very
yeah,
different skill set, very different effort that you place into both of them. So yeah, as a hiring manager, you have to be cautious. And again, you cannot be like completely cautious, because if you're too cautious, you're spending a ton of time, and that's
yeah.
just not the best use of your time. So it's a learning process. You make mistake. And the best part, I hire interns who can in future become full-time employees, but you don't have that big commitment of you're hiring them and they have to
Hmm,
stay. They eventually leave in
exactly.
3 months almost, or 6 months.
Yeah. Okay. So, transitioning into a little um more details about like what exactly is that you do. Can you tell us about a project that you worked on in the past or that you are working on right now? And how is it that data science or machine learning, whatever it is that you have covered in this, how is it that that has played a part in the project that you worked on? Whatever details that you can obviously share
Yeah.
would be
Okay.
insightful. But we're just trying to understand what exactly does a intern program look like, or any of your projects, like what exactly do they look like?
Yeah.
What is the structure?
So once interns come in, it's there's the basic orientation and stuff, and then we get to the work around the projects and things like the problems they solve.
Hmm.
How does the project look? So I'll tell about one of the projects that some of the interns who are working with me are working on right now. So this is a project that started before I joined the company. So the first round of this project, let's say call it Project X 1.0, was done before I joined the company. And then they used machine learning to solve a certain problem. And then I came in and
Hmm.
then so the problem, I can share what the problem is first. So as I said, my team receives tons of data, and this is a whole project around POIs, points of interest. So we receive tons of data, all of this data coming in, and because there are multiple different suppliers, so we try to take care of all the supplier volatility, the
Hmm.
formats that the supplier could provide you data in, and then the label that they provide. Sometimes it could say that this is the email, but it ends up being their phone number. Sometimes there is no label to the tons of data that you receive, and those are important fields of data. It could be their phone numbers, their opening hours, or where they're located. I mean, if you don't
Hmm.
have the location, where will you put them on the map? So
Yeah.
all of that data. And with this project, we were trying to basically deal with all this volatility, keep the internal teams, shield them from all this volatility. Like we have a new supplier coming in, or the same supplier changes like their formats, their ways, or their standards of delivering data within multiple deliveries, like one time something else, the next time something else. It does not happen very often, but again, it does happen. So our project was made around this, and then many a times you have new suppliers coming in, but you as a company, we do not just sign suppliers. Okay, you have data, okay, we'll buy it from you. It does not work like that. We assess the kind of data they have. Is
Correct.
it useful? Because 20 years of map making, we have a lot of data. We wouldn't pay
Yeah.
you to give us the same data that we already have in our map. It's basically the same thing. So for doing all of that assessment, you need to know what data they're providing. And to know the data, you need to know the labels you have with that data.
Yeah.
So that is where this project kicks in. We try to put label on the kind of data they have given us. So teams downstream can do a lot of things with them. And so when I arrived, the problem had already been tried to like be dealt with through some machine learning. The past interns did some work and applied some of the machine learning models. The model they used was HMM, hidden Markov model, and some like Viterbi algorithms to predict some internal states, the hidden states as we call them. It was really a challenging, or I would say a complex model, because I never heard about it. I knew the basic ones, but I never heard about it. Then I read about the model. As per my understanding, this was supposed to be one of the models you used for when you have like time sequential data or you have a stochastic data. But the kinds of data we receive, it has not a lot. It has almost nothing to do with time. It's in place. It's geographical data, it's geospatial data. So, but again, if you stretch it far enough, you could use it for things. So they used that, and the results were fine. That was a false statement. I'll take it back. The results we were not able to assess because there was no right way of assessing the result. So it ended up becoming a multi-class classification problem. You have multiple things in different classes, and then you have important classes, because suppliers give us like 50 different fields of or 50 different variables around just one POI, but we don't really need all of that. So we have some important classes. So putting the right data into the right classes, that is the challenging task, and that's what we try to do with this intern project.
So as far as I understand this, I try to, like ask the question every time, like before I look at a machine learning problem,
Yes.
I try to ask whether it is a machine learning problem or not.
Yeah.
Can this be solved without using ML techniques? Because when we talk about things in general, most companies are not using any high level machine learning algorithms for their day-to-day tasks. It's all very simple things. So as soon as you explained the problem, my question is that why do you need to involve an ML algorithm for classification purposes, and why can't you just assign like labels via humans? That's what people have, like companies have been doing. Like, is it because of the quantity of the data, or like the privacy issues, or like what kind of issues are there, so that human labeling is not involved?
Yeah. That is a very good question. So, because this project was started before I joined the company, I do not know the answer to this. That's not what I will tell you. I dug deeper. I went into it and figured out why we use machine learning, or why we still need to use machine learning. And as you said, so the cost of dealing with a problem increases a lot, or increases as much as you keep going downstream. There are the suppliers who give us data, and then there is us, and then there is teams using downstream. If we solve the problem at downstream, or if we solve it the problem at the customer end, then the experience is bad, because we're not really solving the problem. They have everything here and there, no data which has been made sense of. And then there is downstream teams. They solve the problem, they have tons of other things to do, and the data has passed a lot of places. Then before that is us. Now your question is, why not before us? So if we solve the problem at the supplier end, we'll have to convince all of our suppliers, new and old, small and big, to give data as per our standards. Now that becomes more of a human problem and a leverage problem. You cannot always leverage all of your suppliers and ask them to give things as you want, because you are not their only customer who buys data. There's tons of other people. And then if you go even behind them, some suppliers supply data, but then it's not like they pick data out of some random place. They collected that data either themselves or they bought that from somewhere. So you go even back, or when the data was collected, those teams do not know about a company TomTom that they're selling data to. So they cannot really, you know, disrupt their own ongoing processes. So we try a lot. We are trying hard with major suppliers, like some of our big suppliers who contribute a lot, so that we could have some standards. There we would need to apply this tool. But in other cases, you definitely need the tool. And then comes your point of human labeling. That's what we're doing. That's what we do right now. But what is the problem with it? One is it takes money. Humans sitting there just doing the labeling. And that was a real concern actually. When I get like into the further parts of the project, I'll tell you like how it how those things did not look very good when compared to a human doing them. But yeah, if a human does it, there's a lot of money involved. And the other thing is time. So these days, if there is a blockage on the road, you want to see it as a consumer right now. The road is blocked. You don't want to wait for days because you are on the road right now. So it becomes more of a throughput time issue. The data is coming to us, the supplier has provided us, or we've scraped it out of tons of other like website or something, and we have the data. But what stops us as TomTom to be competitive, to be good enough, or to provide a good customer experience is us not being able to make use of the data we have. So, but if there is a machine sitting in place doing all of that, this could be done in seconds rather than people sitting and waiting for weeks to do that task.
Yeah.
So,
Also, there is a certain amount of error also that comes with humans.
yeah, there's error
handling
also
labeling.
both with machines and humans. But yeah, humans, machine you train enough, you know, at least there is less
Correct.
error. But with humans, and these errors sometimes do not get like caught, and that is again a problem.
So as far as I understood, like I work in the healthcare domain, and when we get like patient data, we standardize it according to like CDISC. CDISC is like Clinical Data Exchange, consortium or something. So we have a set standard that softwares can work on. So if you are getting patient data, there are certain softwares which accept some data format. As far as I'm understanding, there is no such thing for like mapping data, or is it?
That's a very good thing you mentioned, and that is the other problem I'm very much recent, like very soon into the future, going to deal with. It's going to be a bigger project, and the thing is, like once you have data, you know what is what. This is the name, this is the address, this is phone number, everything. This is around a certain POI. But then, what does it do? Is it a temple, or if temple, then which religion does this temple, or does this religious institution involved fall under? What kind of restaurant is this? Thai or Indian or Mexican? And then if you keep looking, there's more than tens of thousands of such categories. We call it categorization, very apt term we use for it. So there are standards, and the issue with standards is there's tons of standards. There is NICS and there is SIC 87 codes. There is OSM, which is an open community for, you call it OpenStreetMap. It's an open map. People provide feedback. There are those standards. And again, you understand, we make map for the whole world and tons of data coming from places. So every country could have a different standard, and within the same country, you would have different standards, and it changes a lot. And then if you talk about the problem in just the definite space, as we talk internally, which is standard to standard mapping, which is very direct. Like this is, let's say, 10,000 standards, but certain list has just 500 standards. How do you do the mapping? Which of these do you finally pick? Or let's say there are TomTom internal standards. Which one do you go with? That's in itself a very big problem. And then again, imagine some data that does not fall into any standard, or it's not according to any standard. Many small companies make up their own proprietary standards. Like this is some X company, their own X company standard. Now you have something very new to deal with, and who's gonna do it? But
The
that,
But there's also trade-off, right? Like if you have a vendor who's giving you really, really good data that you haven't got all along, and the data is not structured in the format that is maybe acceptable to TomTom or that TomTom is used to, isn't that like, have there been cases where you've been like, okay, we really need this data, so we are going to make do with this messy bunch of
that is
input
the
that we
reason we
have
have that
and
kind
just
of data, because see, it's a big company. We do
yeah.
talk, there's a lot of interdepartmental communications, but the team buying the data and the team making sense of it and the team using it, all of those are different teams. So you have leverage, you have communications, and how much we get out of a certain supplier. those things do happen, and then it's all about your one-to-one relationships with those suppliers also, because many of our suppliers also buy data from us, the products we make, or sometimes the data also.
Yeah. So like when you mentioned that there are like 100 different standards, now I get, the issue that you were pointing out. Let's say you pick a standard today. You don't know what laws the countries change, or
Yeah.
they make new laws and make a new standard which is accepted worldwide, and then you suddenly have to change everything that you did. um, Fixing a standard, looking at the long term effects of the standards, how compatible that standard would be based on the future applications that the standard, like that using the standard can help make, can
Yeah.
help, like, monetize our business. That's really tough.
The situation is bad, but again not so bad, because has happened like, I'm not very sure, but Shrek, correct me if I'm like wrong in this one. But as happened with data, like when all of the companies and everyone came together to form relational database and SQL, so that you could structure your data good. The same thing happens here. You have foundations, and these big, at least the big companies and the big producers of data and the users of data, they come together and set certain standards. Like there will always be people who don't use them, but a good chunk of them
Mhm.
do use them.
Right.
And so that is why I can name a few which are famous. OSM, which is Open Community, their standards. NAIC is sick. So,
Hmm.
but the problem still remains.
Yeah.
But that is a different problem. The problem we are dealing with right now is the first label, making sure what we have in certain type of data.
So why don't you just be like Google and ask people like CAPTCHA, um,
Yeah.
just solve this for like, what does this look like? Does this look like a phone number or an email to you?
Does it
Like,
look like a temple or a mosque? Like that's how you can.
That is a real approach. That's what we are gonna do. Like even if the model works, model is not 100% accurate. So
yes.
in the end, the transition will be in stages. We are not directly gonna go on a model. There will be people, but much fewer people who will see if the model did the right thing. They'll just be shown the results. They won't have to do the labeling stuff.
Yeah, like today I only like read that this captcha thing, for any sort of label data, there is some level of human intervention that is definitely needed, and Google has been using us,
Oh yeah.
like their unpaid labor, for just dealing with
20
captcha.
years.
Like what are these street lights, what are just like collect, just take the ambulance. And
Yeah.
I just got to know today that the full form, I just just check it over here. I just got to know today that the full form of CAPTCHA is completely automated public Turing test to tell computers and humans apart. So completely, yeah. So CAPT is completely automated public Turing test to tell CHAS, computers and humans apart. Like, let's say you get the data from the vendors now, and your actual multi-class classification problem. What are some steps that you are taking, and what's your
Yeah.
first approach? Uh, be it like pre-processing the data. Like I'm just assuming that the ETL pipeline is
Yeah.
set up in place already. You don't have to do anything with that.
Yeah. It is and it is not. It's both, because it all comes back to like how things are designed or how they were designed, what the past processes were, because the system that we have right now is there to support how things are going right now. They do try to make it such that in future, if some need comes, they accommodate it, but not completely. And given with this application, we do not have labeled data readily that we can just use and make a model out of. So that is one of the challenges I faced when I started with this project. The version 1.0, when that happened, the past interns used about 50 or 55 files. And again, file is not really a good measure of data, because it should either be in the standard of like megabytes, gigabytes, or the number of records I have for a certain POI. But it was very small. We deal with millions of POIs data in an hour. That is the kind of streaming of POIs we do at TomTom. So that wasn't enough data. So the first goal I had was to increase the scale. To do any email, you need at least some scale, if not very big scale, at least some scale to justify doing an ML. Otherwise, it's not really ML. And
Not
the
worth it. Yeah.
second thing I saw was around assessment. Like they built some model, they did something, but again, if you're doing multi-class classification and if you are reporting your results by giving the metric of accuracy, that's incomplete. And I am holding back when I say incomplete. Shrey wasn't really happy when I told him about this in the past. So there's tons of other metrics you need to show, like a confusion matrix, and then again like precision, recall, TPR,
God,
and
accuracy. Yeah.
and I could go on. The list is big, but you need something, some standard thing. So my goal was to increase the size, and then there is this whole, let's call it a black box of ML. Some ML you're doing it with it, and then the result. So some way to assess the result you have and connecting that result to the job to be done. What is the business need for this endeavor that we're like taking? So that is what I did with this project right now. And scaling data sounds good because you can do tons of good like complex ML with it, but scaling is tough. Scaling is time consuming. Scaling is not fancy. Scaling is boring.
It's also labor intensive, right? Like you must have come across instances where you had interns on your team, but either they were finding the task too difficult, or like team members were finding it too challenging to even break down the task for the interns, right? So has that been the case that you found it really difficult, or like interns are in essence they are graduates, or like even in their third year or in their pre-final year or whatever, but
Yeah,
it
that
is
is
difficult for them, right?
yeah.
So have you come across this instance
Yeah.
where you faced
All the time. Yeah, that is I see, like that's what I'm gonna say. That is what I see as my primary job. With these
okay.
people or any intern coming or anyone for that matter, let's say even if you hire a new employee, when they come into your company, everything is the names
Yeah.
you use and the things you have in there and the type of data you have in there. They haven't dealt with those kind of stuff. And how you store data, where you store data, all of that, and teams and who to talk to about what things. So my job I see is all about good communication and setting in context, telling them what happens, why it happens, where it happens, what you need to do, and why you're doing a certain thing. All of those questions. As with label data, I said like luckily we didn't have to do any labeling of data in the sense because the labels existed. Because right now TomTom exists, we give you all the maps and everything, we sell it, we make
Yeah.
money. So labels exist and the raw data also exists. But there was never a need to store the label data, the labels or and the raw data together. Because raw data is not what we use. We do a lot of operations on the raw data and then it becomes usable data and then labels are attached to it or labels go with it. In the process, somewhere labels come and that data is stored. So you have good, clean and like made sense of like some operations done data with labels. But this is not what you can use for your machine learning because in the future, when the model is deployed, you're going to have raw data feeding into it.
Absolutely, yeah.
You cannot
That
do.
helps a lot. That really broke it down. Like you
Yeah,
really broke it down well.
yeah. So again, you could do it, but bad,
Hmm.
not
Hmm.
good. Because from this point on, you're just going to go deeper into project. So do not take that kind of risk. So I had to figure out where all the raw data is stored. And by what do you mean by raw data? Because operations, it's not like it entered into a box and the outcome came and you have new data. It goes through multiple operations, what all has to be done. You have to really, as a program manager, or in this role, I don't know if I'm a program or a project manager or what capacity I am, but the goal is clear to make this work. So it is my job to go and first and see what happens and where is the original copy, how it was received. And luckily, this is one of the rules in mapping companies. You store the raw data always because tomorrow, if something happens because of your product, someone saw something wrong on the road, it comes back to the supplier who provided it. So we always retain a copy of the raw data. So we gathered the raw data, gathered all the labels, but then these labels and raw data were not stored in a way such that you can just put one on top of another and know what is label. Just matching label to the raw data is another problem.
Yeah.
And if you write a logic for it, someone is like, oh, let's just write a logic for matching the labels to the raw data. That is a chicken and egg situation. You do realize that is what we're trying to do with the project, putting labels on the data. And if I had a logic to put the existing labels on the existing raw data, I could very well just use it in future.
That's what I was coming to exactly. Like, why just not create a data dictionary of and a set of rules that okay, you have these 20 parameters that you need. You are getting like 100 parameters. You take the first parameter and just check that this first parameter matches the most closely with which of the parameters in the raw data file, and then just do it. It's not a program it's
Yeah.
not a big deal for like 2 months.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then
so I think Shrey, you will be getting an internship offer letter from Naman now. Like you come, you have such useful insights, you come and intern with us only.
no, then Naman actually explained me the
Yeah.
actual problem that
Yeah.
like, they don't
So
know
yeah.
what data looks like.
Yeah.
It might be just blank values. We're
Yeah.
just comparing something with nothing, something that doesn't exist at all. And then you have to like map things to multiple things and then choose from those multiple things. Probably
Mm.
set a threshold somewhere that, okay, this is the best match, something or the other. So that in itself is a job, which is, yeah, I think another internship program
Yeah,
in.
yeah, yeah, oh, definitely. Like, I was very ambitious when I like started this project with the interns, but again, I should have known better. People don't just say it when they say 70% of ML is just getting the data in the form that you could do any ML with it. But we luckily did some good progress. The interns did some good work there, and then we were able to get the data. And there were again multiple challenges even in this process. I said we got the data, but with a lot of hurdles because let's say you get the raw files and we luckily had the logic to map these things together because when they separated, people were smart enough to store the logic somewhere, so we could get the logic and put it in there. We stored all of our data. Now let's say we have label data, but then comes the issue, these labels stored with different ID, the ID with which you pick what are the labels, which file is it for, and then the raw data. And then once you do all the mapping, the interns saw that you go back and see every file, it's not really correct. That's not correct because testing in your code, there is no testing in your code. Testing is needed at every point. You do things in stage. You don't just do everything for like 10,000 files. You do it for 5 files and see the logic and then scale it. So those small things come in, and then hours before the review, you're really struggling. Oh man, I was gonna present this in the review, and I have these I was gonna be so like boast about I was gonna do with all of this, and then now it does not really exist. So there were many challenges, but in the end, we got good label data and got a good command over it. Like there were files there were with the true labels, and then we could do good amount of ML with it. And that is where I was really happy. But then that's where I learned the limits of my understanding of doing an ML project. Good label data, ML model. It does not just go into it. And then especially when you're just dealing with scale, how do you make it a balanced like data set? You cannot have it biased, like just one class a lot and few classes not enough representation. You have to be inclusive with the data, and then data has to be like, and model does not just accept anything, whether it's one class, like again with our file it goes into like whether it's columnar data, each class stored separately, or it's a file data, dealing with those things. And the biggest challenge I had was once you start doing things, you get so much into the science of it, like oh, let's do this conversion, let's run this operation, save it in this format, or put it into random forest model, or as I said in the past, HMM model. But you're doing all of this to do a thing, not just to do this. So you have to be close to the data, see what the data looks like, what has to happen with the data. So we, again, choosing file format was tough. We went with CSV because it was simple, everyone knew it, we could open it in our Excel. And again, not just technical people, everyone we received feedback from on the business side could open the file and see what the data looked like. That really helped keeping people close to where the problem is, and that is what you forget when you're doing such projects.
I just had one follow-up just on this line, on these lines. Like, do you see this problem, like, say 5 years down the line, do you see this problem going away? Like, once you have the infrastructure in place, do you see that maybe the standards will change, or maybe you guys will have just a basic infrastructure in place to, map the data together? Or do you see some scope in the future where this problem actually goes away to a major extent? Obviously, it won't happen to like 100%, but
The
like
one
at
thing we
least
are
like
talking
50.
about right now, this problem, it won't go away because it's
Hmm.
there cannot be standards about, let's say, you have let's say employee data or salary data, name of employee, company they work at, position and salary. Some other company could call the name just NM or just N or employee, and then for the company you could have firm, you could have any of those like business. So these labels that you put on the data could be could be very change a lot with the company and everything. The other problem, you could have different standards, but with this one also, and again, let's say we apply ML to it, all the good models you have and the good practices, and then we have a good working solution. Then comes the problem of changing time, and with time changing data. Your model was trained on something, but now that your model has to keep up with changes in how you're receiving data now. But then kicks in ML ops, and we are too far away from it. So retraining, monitoring the data, and doing all of that, that's far away. We are not doing any of that right now. The model hasn't been deployed. It's in the process. It's being made.
Yeah, so I just had like one comment that wherever, like we start off with an ML project, it's always like sort of advisable to start basic, like start with the basic algorithms first, even if it's like a classification problem. Let's say if it's a binary classification, you start off with logistic regression first, and then is see that, if you're able to explain the problem better, if you're getting the desired results with like a simple logic, only then streamline or add complex data and then use more complex models. So yeah, that's where I was wondering at what was your approach in this, as you mentioned, like, like the hidden Markov models straight away for classification. And I also remember that you were like the reason that I was smiling during, like you were explaining about the intern expectations. I remember you coming and, and like we were talking about the model evaluation, and you were like, we can't just evaluate a classification model using accuracy as a metric. And we both had a good laugh at that and sorts of these challenges. So again, expecting things from interns doing high level stuff as compared to starting off simple, like what has been your approach and their
You are definitely right. And one again, like I have the luxury of living with two data scientists, Shrey, and my other roommate is also a data scientist, and my girlfriend is a data scientist. So I'm surrounded by data scientists. And you should really start simple. And Shrey told me that the first day, and that's what even I asked it like in the past, like why was the project so started with HMM? But again, as you see, that is where comes one rule of good documentation. TomTom does it very good, but the interns did not really understand the essence. I feel like I don't want to like downplay them, but you see, documentation is not just about what finally happened.
Yeah.
There is a process to things. You see what all you explored. Why didn't you choose certain things, and then why you chose the thing you're doing right now? So had I had access to some of such documentation, like if simple things were explored, I could have made use of it. But now because none exists, that was the other thing we're doing right now with scale data. Not just evaluate the existing model on a large scale with better metrics, but develop a very simple model. Before getting to ML from AI, we try to do some rule-based AI, just put some rules.
Yes.
It could be an easy problem, and then using them, classify them. We are trying to do that right now, and if results come good, I mean, that is the thing. It's not a class assignment where you get good marks for doing the most complex model. It's a real world problem. The simpler the model I use, the happier my boss and my downstream teams will be, because the processing time will be less. The kind of money they spend on that model in its maintenance will be less.
Now, I'll just try to wrap up this thing, because like you said that start off like as I said, like we should always start off simple, and you also said that start off with the rule based things. Like that's what used to happen back in the days when AI was nothing but just a bunch of if else statements. Now here comes sort of a trade off between time and results. The interns being there just for 2 or 3 months, they don't have enough time. And if they start off really simple, they might not be able to complete or even get close to the project. And if they don't like get a good result or be able to deploy, or deploying is like a major
Just
milestone.
perform.
I
Well,
believe, for an intern, deployment is like only a few people are able to achieve that sort of completion in their projects. But yeah, from an intern's perspective, if he starts off like very, very, very simple, it's like a trade-off between he'll like not be able to complete the project, and then like a bad evaluation, I would say, and then no conversion to a final offer if there are like spots. So it's kind of a dilemma for the intern. So that state, being the hiring manager. So like what are your final thoughts about intern evaluation and taking these things into consideration? Like what do you have as like a thought process while going through their stages in the company, knowing that the problems that they faced were real and they didn't have any options, or they or like you had options, they came up with a good idea. Like how do you evaluate things?
So yeah, this is a good question. And my answer to this is, how do you evaluate? So the way we evaluate things in a company is very different from how schools or colleges evaluate the performance of an intern, because they send an intern to make impact out there and come back boasting big numbers and usually percentages or money they saved and those things, or the time they saved. But with us at companies, we understand, especially in the kind of area I am, we deal with innovative projects. And for the first thing that I write up like big on my board and share with my boss and other people is like more than half of the projects we will do are gonna fail. And once that do not fail, like I'm quoting some of these things from this book, a PM book by inspired a big guy, let's say. And the ones that we really do will take time to give value to the company. So you cannot really do something, and that too with ML, you cannot just do it and have value within 3 months. And then comes because we talked so much about tech, we forgot the human angle on this. There is an intern. If the intern wants to do the project and get done and show some progress, have some closure. They don't want to just label data and collect data and build data pipelines. So that is where it comes. And the way we evaluate is we give you a problem and how well you are able to understand the problem, and how much of creative work you can do around like solving the problem. Because these sometimes, let's say I come and I give you a problem and you ask me questions, and then you figure out just trying to solve a problem, and then you write a bunch of code for it. Then the outcomes are two: one, it works, it addresses my problem; two, it does not work because you did not understand the problem and you did not take the effort to clarify or get enough feedback. So my biggest criteria, I would say, is feedback. How much feedback are you collecting on the work you're doing? How much you're understanding the problem? And the other thing, sometimes how much of how much of whys are you asking me? I give you a problem to solve. You ask me why does it need to be solved? Because many times the problem does not even have to be solved. It's not a problem at all. No one needs it solving. It does not help anyone. You think it helps, but it does not. So I am much happier. You take your whole day and don't do anything. Just tell me it does not have to be done. Leave it. And that makes me more. So as long as the interns are putting in their head to the work, I am very happy. Just ask me questions, ask me tons of things. And that comes back to like my style, my management style that I'm still trying to find because I'm just 5 months into my management. I try to make it such that we have good aggressive and tough conversations around things and try to open the ground as much as possible. Everything. So what I have seen, like I've seen in my small 2 to 1.5 2 year career in the corporate world, is every company you go, every manager you go, they'll ask you to innovate, they'll ask you to be creative, do things differently, and do everything. And the thing is, like most of the times when you see big ideas coming out of people who are high up in the company, the VPs, the directors, people making big changes. One, because they have a lot of power, but then the other thing that people do not address is the asymmetry of information. Those are the people who have information. Me sitting down who has no information, even if I come up with something, it's going to be so misaligned with the strategy of the company or where you are that it does not even make sense. Same as with the interns. So what I try to do in my management is everything I know, I share with them. And I make my job to share everything. Like, why are we doing this? Who has problem with this? What are the opposing views? Why this can be done? Why this cannot be done? And then you challenge me. You give me better way of doing this, and then I'm open to it, and then we can go ahead. Sometimes they do give better ways. Sometimes we have good discussions, and then realize that something is just we want to do it. It's not the right thing to do for the company, so we don't do it this way. For an instant, like after a meeting, an intern could go back unhappy because these things didn't go in their way. But I've seen them much happier because they know the context, what is happening. They feel included. They feel like place confidence in them to let them know about everything that is going.
They feel really involved in the project, right? It really helps when you break down such complicated projects for the entry level people, because it's like they're anyway so new and intimidated by everyone around them. You really treat them with the equal respect that you're giving to your other employees, or you really break it down for them. It makes them feel valuable in that moment, and it also is a good rep for the company, right? Like the way you treat your interns says a lot about the culture of your company.
Yeah,
So
like this is actually I'd say a problem with the big companies, that there is
mm,
not much visibility to the interns or any, like junior level employee. And basically, it's just your teammates and your manager that
mm,
can give you visibility. And, it's a big issue in the sense that intern programs might not be fulfilling for people.
mm,
Like,
Yeah.
I can just say, based on my experience, I interned last summer, and my experience was not very good because out of the 10 weeks into my my internship period, I got to know about the project after 3 weeks. Uh, like what I'll be doing, and the manager and everyone, like who I was supposed to be in contact with, we didn't have much interaction. First of all, because it was fully remote. The second thing was that even they were very uncertain that, oh, we have hired an intern, now what do we do with him? So
Yeah.
big companies, when they hire people, they need to have a, like a very solid intern program, so that from an intern's point of view as well, he feels like, content, that okay, I'm learning something new. And that, I feel, based on, like Naman's like statements, and the friends who did internships last year, if they had a good manager, they had a good experience. If they didn't have a
yeah,
good manager, be it any, like the company scale doesn't matter. If you're
yeah,
doing something
absolutely.
worthwhile, your manager, your sole point of contact, is the one who makes or breaks your internship. Uh,
Absolutely.
yeah, Naman, again, kudos to you for being so
Yeah.
transparent, being such
Like
a
that,
great.
that's like even how I see my managers or the other people at the company managing teams. The more vulnerable you keep yourself around other teams or around other people, the better I see you, because you are not really scared of putting yourself, your work, your team out there. Be open to questions. What is the worst one can do? They'll just see like what you do does not make sense at all. The whole work your team does not make sense at all. But
Mm.
fine, I'm open for your feedback. Like, not be offended. They give feedback, you take it, and even if you be offended, be open to feedback.
Be open to being offended.
Yeah, it serves well. Like, it goes well sometimes in companies, like because of such things, not giving feedback or not opening yourself to getting feedback. That keeps you into an isolation, and you do so much work that people like us sit outside and say like, why is the company even doing that? It does not make sense. Because individuals are smart, mass is stupid. Groups of people can do very wrong things.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we should wrap this up. We are way past our planned time limit, but it was so great talking to you, Naman, and thank you so much for joining us and sharing such valuable insights. And I feel like as professionals, it's very important to like really talk about the ground reality of any field that you're working in, be it technology, be it marketing, be it whatever field that we are in today. It's really important to talk about what work actually goes on behind the scenes, And I feel like your insights were extremely helpful for this. And I feel like one takeaway that we could derive from this conversation is like ask a lot of whys, like the interns or the students watching, like, just like as a piece of advice that I feel like I got from this entire podcast. Even as a professional, it's like I need to start asking more whys, and yeah, that's always helpful. So thank you so much for this conversation.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. It was nice talking about these things, and it was fun.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Naman. Thanks a lot, Simran.
Thank you.